Hi everyone, it's Jason from the Millie PM2 Para-3 Club. I have a couple knives here I wanted to show you that were brought to you as they were brought to me, courtesy of my buddy Jake over at Bearded Gear. If you haven't checked out Bearded Gear's YouTube channel, you really should. Jake has some awesome reviews and real-world tests of knives and EDC gear, and being a backpacker and an outdoor guy, his perspective is valuable, I think, when it comes to evaluating these things. But Jake sent me these 3 knives and he said, you really need to try them out. And even though none of them are Spydercos, I'm an open-minded guy. I want to try new stuff. I like new knives. I like knives in general, so I thought I'd give it a try. Each of these knives is really interesting in a different way, so I just thought I'd share a couple insights with you and see what you think. The first one I'm going to talk about is this one. This is the Three Rivers Manufacturing Neutron. Now, I've heard of the name Three Rivers Manufacturing. I know that they're revered. I know they're hard to get. And beyond that, I didn't know much about the knives until I started playing with this one. And first off, this thing completely blew me away in a way that's very different from these other 2 knives. This knife, everything about it feels utterly handmade. And I did a little research online, did a little Google searching, and found that this is a very small company with small batches of knives. And you can really tell in the way that it feels in the fit and finish of the knife. So normally, when we talk about handmade quality, when we talk about attention to detail, to be honest with you, laser beams and robots are actually more precise than the handmade nature. And when we look at knives like this Benchmade, this ProTECH, or Spydercos in general, you're going to find that the precision with which they're manufactured is very, very exact. With this TRM knife, what I'm noticing is that the little things just feel like they have a little touch of love, a little sprinkle of love in there. The way that the scales are rounded on the edges, the way that they feel in the hand, the way that this roundover is not perfect, but it's still excellent. It speaks to the nature with which these guys make their products. I imagine that there's probably some dude at the factory that actually hand sands these, and you can just kind of tell when you play with it. To begin with, this knife is incredibly light. It barely weighs anything thanks to its titanium liners and its beautiful blade. Very thin blade stock. This is 90 thousandths, so that's quite thin as far as knives go. The handle is wonderful. In the hand, this knife is very, very comfortable to hold. It has a really nice gription going on here. I'm going to invent a word for a second. Gription. Is that a word? I think I've heard it before. The edge is excellent. It's a 3.3 inch. No, sorry, it's a 3-inch length edge with a nice sharpening choil. The thing looks really easy to maintain. It looks easy to take care of. That's important to me. I don't want a knife that's too fussy. If a knife is overly fussy, then I'm afraid to carry it. I'm afraid to use it. This knife, I believe, comes tip up or tip down, and it looks like you can go left to right, which I'm a big fan of. The clip is functional and simple, not a fancy clip, but this knife doesn't really necessitate a fancy clip. It looks like when these are available and when you can get them, they're available with different types of scale material. This is a beautiful micarta. Really nice black micarta. Now this is my style of micarta. I don't know exactly what the composition is, but the look and the touch and the feel of this style of micarta is wonderful. I believe this is probably just a linen with a really heavy dye on it. But overall, a wonderful knife, very nice to use. The thin blade stock really makes this a pleasure to slice with, and just a beautiful instrument. So if you get a chance to pick one of these up, or if you come across one and it's a good deal, my advice is to grab it. In the Spyderco world, the things that this would directly compare to would be like a maybe a native lightweight, or a Sage, or a maybe even a Para-3 lightweight. But this knife has a style and class to it that's really excellent. My only criticisms about this knife would be that left-handed, this knife is really a nightmare. That thumb stud is right up against the scales, so you can see there's really no chance of getting your thumb in there and opening this knife, not easily. And even right-handed, it's rather tight. So I see why that is. They wanted the knife to stay really slim, and they didn't want to make too much of a bulge in the top of the blade. And when the knife is open, it looks wonderful. My friend Joseph Firo is a big believer that the knife should look as good open as it does closed. And I think aesthetically, this knife looks wonderful, but I would challenge them to maybe scoop this out just a bit more so that I can get my thumb on the thumb stud. Now, speaking of the thumb stud, it's an interesting look. It looks like, unlike most thumb studs out there, it has this nice muffin top to it, and your thumb fat's just going to get caught underneath that and open it up. So that's an interesting approach. It doesn't have the knurling on it that some do. Really a nice little thumb stud, but it's just not really a flipper knife. It's not a flicker knife. It's just a beautiful, well-made, handmade knife, and I wasn't really able to find any pricing on these because they're not available currently. But I don't believe these are very expensive even. So really wonderful, Pittsburgh-made, beautiful handmade knife. So I do recommend it. The next knife I want to talk about is a ProTECH. This is the ProTECH PR-1 Malibu. Now this knife is a total surprise to me. I didn't think I would like this knife, but I do love it. I love most everything about it. You have to ignore the look of the blade. In my head, you know, in my crazy brain, I'm not too crazy about the sheep's foot look. That being said, this is a really nice edge. This is a 3.3 inch blade with a nice sharpening choil. We've got a nice usable tip down here, and then almost a Wharncliffe in that it's very flat. When the knife is in your hand, it's very comfortable to hold. Your thumb falls right back here where you want it to get maximum push on the blade. Your fingers grip it comfortably, and we really have one large swell here and then a smaller swell here thanks to these little bevels that are cut into the handle, giving you a really good grip on the knife. I would personally, if this was my design, I think I would put a little bit more of a ramp on the end of the blade, or excuse me, on the end of the handle. I would want just a little bit of a ramp there, but that's just me. Really not a criticism overall. This knife is wonderful to hold. Now the scales are aluminum, and aluminum is not a super common choice in a premium knife. Generally we see titanium here instead of aluminum, but the advantage to aluminum is that it's much lighter, and even lighter than the tie. The anodizing on the handle is wonderful, really well done. And then probably the best feature on this knife is just how wonderfully flippy it is and how wonderfully fidgety it is. This knife just opens and closes on a whim. I wish I was better at it right-handed so I could really show off, but I've seen some maniacs really hammer this thing out. Now for my lefties out there, 9% of you that are watching this video, this knife is very friendly left-handed. Nothing wrong with using your finger to deactivate the lock versus your thumb. Nothing wrong with that. When you carry it, you're just going to have the inconvenience of the clip being on the wrong side. But for a knife as slim as this, I don't really see that being an issue. Your hand's going to slip in here right behind the blade. It's no big deal. The detent ball is a really nice amount of pressure. It's not too heavy and it's not too light. The knife is not going to fall open on its own, so I really don't worry about the knife coming open. I was pushing on the lock button. I don't worry about it coming open on you. But the fidgety part of it is amazing. It makes this knife really fun. The drop shut is like a perfectly dialed in PM2, but probably a little bit smoother. So if you're ready, this is the best part about this knife. 20 CV steel, really good look to it overall, and it comes in at under $200. I just did a quick search on Blade HQ, and I believe these are $189. So, I mean, $189 for this, it's a hell of a deal. I think about some of the other knives that are available in this price range. It makes this thing really hard to beat. The blade stock is fairly substantial, so we're talking about a pretty beefy knife. This thing is not going to bend on you. It's not going to deflect. We have sort of a, boy, what do we call this grind? I don't even remember now. It's a Scandi. Thank you. It's a Scandi grind. So with the Scandi grind, we have more or less a flat grind, but it comes to a nice smooth piece here. So what I like about this style of grind lately is the fact that it's going to clamp really well when you come to sharpen it. So it's going to be very, very easy to put in your sharpener and make it work. So I don't know a better way to spend $200 right now, other than maybe save your lunch money and get a Kapara. But even a Kapara isn't this much fun to flip. So really shockingly nice knife. Jake, thanks for insisting on this one. If you hadn't sent it, I don't know that I would have said yes. This is not something I would have asked for, but it is truly surprising me. So another really cool knife. So the last knife I want to talk about is this Benchmade. I know. Hear me out. Benchmade 565-1. The -1 part means carbon fiber. It also features S90V steel. This model happens to be from the first production, and I know that because Benchmade will put it right on the blade. So thank you guys. I don't even know where to start. Let's see here. To begin with, this knife feels fantastic in the hand. Holy cow. Man, when you hold this thing, it's terrific. We've got just the right amount of jimpy jimp on the back here where your thumb's gonna go. We have a good amount of jimping here as well. So to these Spyderco trained hands, to these finely tuned machines, this knife really feels at home in my hand. I love a nice big swell here to keep me from getting my fingers onto the blade. That's important to me, but at the same time, I also like it here as well because I don't want to lose track of the knife when I'm holding it. I want to be able to cut aggressively through double, triple wall cardboard, and I don't want the knife to come out of my hand. And that has happened many times with other knives. I don't really worry about that with this knife. The handle is plenty long. I've got really good grip on it. The clip is, as always with Benchmade, is excellent. They do a really good job with their clips, and this is no exception. You don't need an obnoxiously long clip on a smaller knife like this. A little clip like that is more than enough to keep it in your jeans. The standoffs are cool. I like the color contrast with the thumb stud. Really good looking knife. You'll notice that on the Benchmade knives of this style, the scales are relatively fat. They do cut some weight by giving you these cutaways, but what that does overall is it gives you a nice, comfortable profile. So when you're holding the knife, it's very comfortable. Right hand or left hand, it doesn't matter with most Benchmades. They're truly ambidextrous. The nature of the axis lock is that the knife will work left-handed or right-handed. All I need to do is flip the clip and I'm good to go for me. It is a two-finger operation lock. I don't really know that it's very easy to do one finger. You can, but you're gonna find that if you wanna be happy with the Benchmade, you wanna plant the heel of the knife in your palm and you wanna pull and the thing falls shut. What's interesting about those Benchmades is it's almost like it's on a string. When you release it, that blade will absolutely fall over. So fidget factor on most Benchmades is excellent. There's no dialing it in, it just works right. So really a wonderful knife. When I think about bang for the buck, this one comes in at $262 if I remember correctly, street price, which really makes it relatively expensive compared to its peers. So I have a few here that I'm going to bring in and we're going to do like a monster truck rally. So number one would be the Spyderco Native 5 with carbon fiber and S90V steel. This is without a doubt the most elite native available. Linerless, fairly lightweight, all things considered, backlock, and then really that famous native grip, that famous native hand posture, right? You can go back or you can choke up on it. You have a really nice 3-inch blade, full flat grind, makes it very cutty. The 3D curve contour to the handles really makes it comfortable in the hand. This knife streets, I believe, around $250. Comparing that to the Benchmade, with the Benchmade you get really a very similar you know, similar concept, I guess is a good word for it, and also just the nuts and bolts, of course, are similar. That being said, if you need ambidextrous, you're going to find that they're both equally good. If you need fidget factor, I hate to tell you Spyderco, but you're going to be a lot happier with the Benchmade. Being flicky, and then also the drop shut of the axis lock is really going to give you an edge over the back lock on the Spyderco. This is really a beautiful, elegant knife. It's something that you could carry a lot of different walks of life and be very, very happy with it. So comparing it to the Benchmade, I really don't know. I think it's really going to come down to look and lock. The back lock, of course, is a wonderful design. It's the more time-tested design. It's going to be durable in the long run, but it is very, very heavy, and it makes this knife relatively hard to open one-handed. It makes it possible to close one-handed, but it's a little more involved, of course, than this knife, which will just flick open and shut anytime you want it to, right? So it's an interesting comparison, and I really think there's no right or wrong. Personally, if it was my money, I think I'd have a hard time saying no to the Benchmade. The lock is just terrific. Now, just to complicate things, let me bring in another knife. Here we have the Spyderco Paramilitary 3 and S90V and carbon fiber. Now, this knife is a exclusive. It's a deal. Excuse me. This was a sprint run. This is not an exclusive. Being a sprint run, this knife was manufactured for a short time and it will never be made again. So unfortunately for you, if you like this knife, you're going to have to go onto the secondary market to get one. I believe this knife new was about $210. Somebody can fact check me on that if you like, but I believe at dealer this was $210, somewhere in that range. On the used market, they're still cheaper than these two knives, and they do seem to come and go pretty often. So I will regularly see these in the group for sale in the, I don't know, $210 to $250 range. So comparatively, this is, I would say it's less elegant in the fact that it has a flat scale. That is not to say that's a bad thing, because ultimately I think this knife probably has the best grip. You can choke up or come back. The ramp for the thumb is incredible, and the jimping right here is just wonderful. So in terms of making a cutting machine, I think the Para 3 wins over the other two. The stock clip leaves something to be desired. Something that I've said many times is on a Para 3 with a stock clip, about 1/5 of the knife is going to stick out of your pocket. That's a lot. And when you carry these knives with the stock clip, you're going to find that it feels like the knife might fall out. And you're constantly checking it all day long. So a deep carry clip is really a necessary thing on a Para 3, in my opinion. Your mileage may vary, but given that we want a deep carry clip, that's going to add another cost to the knife, right? But for me, I love the edge and the thickness and the flat grind of the Para 3. And when I think about all three of these knives, I don't know that there's a bad choice. I really don't. This is elegant and beautiful. This is functional. It's clever. It's hard use, and it's very flicky and fun. It's also available now. This knife is no longer available, but I would give the edge to the edge on that one. The geometry of the knife, I think, is probably the best. When I look at the Benchmade, it's a little more straight line, and then the native, the part that always confused me about the native is this back part here. This has always been very strange for me. I don't like how much it falls away, and it's just not been my favorite part of the knife. I feel like this is just, like, if I could take this off and put a different piece on here that was shaped slightly different, I think I'd like the knife more. So if I had to, Sophie's choice this thing, I would definitely go with the Para 3. But the Benchmade is a wonderful, wonderful knife. And I've already done a review of the Super Freak. I loved it. And I kind of felt similarly between the Super Freak and the Paramilitary 2, that if you went with the Benchmade versus the Paramilitary 2, you weren't making a bad decision. You were simply just choosing different. So I'm really having my world rocked by Benchmades right now. I won't lie to you. There's some really nice Benchmades that I've enjoyed thoroughly, and this is among them. So again, I want to thank Jake for sending these, because and from now on, the only answer you're going to get from me about what I want is what's good. And I know you'll send me some good stuff. So I hope this helps you guys. I hope this gives you a little more insight into these knives, and maybe it'll encourage you to get excited and go seek one out. I know the Benchmades are available at River's Edge. ProTECHs are available at dealers everywhere. And the Three Rivers, it's probably going to be direct from Three Rivers only. So my advice on those would be to follow their Instagram account. Make sure you set them up so that you get notifications. It's probably the best way to get them. So if you want to talk more about knives, if you want to come and be a part of the group, we'd love to have you. We think of ourselves as a club more than a group. We're really just a bunch of people with a passion for knives. And obviously you can come and talk about anything you like. So you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Instagram. Please join us. And thanks for watching.